Hey everyone, good afternoon. Really looking forward to spending some time with you this afternoon on the topic of sales. It's actually going to be a really exciting and fun time. Sales sometimes feels awkward and is something that some of us don't want to do. But in a crisis and in a recession, we need to. And so our goal today is to actually kind of get creative, and actually put a little bit of energy back into the sales process. And so we're really looking forward to that. For those who don't know me yet, my name is Keith, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Spring. Really good to see some familiar names like Anita and Eglantina. And Laura, great to have you here as well. Erikens, great to see that you are back safely in Tirana.
Yeah, that must have been a journey. Getting back from Tirana to Tirana.
Yeah, from Tirana to Tirana.
Oh. I see what you did there, Keith.
Sorry. So for everybody, I'm originally from Toronto, so Toronto in Ontario, Canada. But when you are from Toronto, you say Tirana, and Tirana sounds a whole lot like Tirana. So
I love Erkin's response in chat.
Yeah. I'm hoping, by the way, that he'll be a guest speaker on this session. Maybe Jesus will come.
Oh, actually, Keith, that might be a good thing to talk about right now. So we would love to have this as a more interactive session. So if someone wants to kind of contribute, we do have a function that allows us to invite you on screen to have a conversation. So if you're comfortable with that and would love to kind of be on the screen with us for a quick second, just let us know in the chat and we'll invite you on screen. So just make sure that your hair is all nice if you want to be shown, or you have a good background. But yeah, we would love to have you more interactive with the session. Eglantina says, I envy him in the situation. Eglantina, where are you abouts right now? Are you stuck somewhere, or are you in Toronto, or whereabouts? Are you stuck? She's stuck in Paris, I think.
Wow. Romantically, that sounds amazing. I think practically that sounds really, really annoying. So I definitely feel for you in that respect. Eglantina, I do know someone else who is stuck in Paris right now. And the highlight that they said to me was the one benefit of being stuck in Paris is they can step out of the window of their Airbnb and just take photos of the Eiffel Tower, but that's about all they're getting. So yeah,
unobstructed. Actually, can people in Paris walk around, or are they fully locked down? Maybe this is a question for Eglantina.
Yeah, I don't know actually.
Yeah, because if you're totally locked down, I can see where that would be horrible. But at the same time, if you can walk around and get a clear picture of you and the Eiffel Tower, that is a rare moment you'll probably never have again.
Yeah, you can go around. Good. Yeah, Eglantina, I managed to leave Madrid, Spain, about 12 hours before they locked the city down. And so if I had not, I would have been there until last weekend. And so I can't imagine. I love Madrid as a city, but I wasn't ready to move there yet. So
yeah. We were worried for Keith for a while that we wouldn't have him for a good couple months. So we were prepared. We were already prepared for that.
Yeah, I think they were hoping, actually, So really excited to get in with everybody. We'll get started in probably just over a minute, just so we can make full use of time. And guys, if you have a question now, let's get started. I'm happy before we officially start to answer any questions you have. Remember, there is an Ask a Question button down below. Ask a question anytime. And if it requires a discussion, as Luann was saying earlier, we can invite you to come on screen as well. And so we're more than happy to do that. So we'll just get started in a minute. And then really looking forward as well to hearing your stories about how you are trying to respond to this crisis with your sales efforts. I'm kind of curious, for everybody, what's your biggest lesson learned? Like, what have you learned in your sales, over the last month and a half? What's your biggest lesson learned? I'd love to hear it. So if you want to pop that into chat, it'd be great to hear. I think for me, probably my biggest lesson learned with respect to spring is that in sales, if we can offer very pragmatic solutions, so nothing fluffy, nothing too big, nothing too complicated, something very pragmatic. I find that being pragmatic has really helped. And then the second learning that I've had in the last few weeks is that helping people to curate, helping people to filter through the noise of all the stuff on the internet to just the content or just the advice that is relevant for our customers. I think that's been really important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of thing on that too, Keith. For me, it's been speed, because to your point, there's so much information out there. There's so many things going on, and being able to be the kind of the first and quickest to disseminate all that information has become the most valuable thing, I think, for a lot of people, because there's just too much noise out there, and your attention's kind of everywhere. So,
yeah, well said. Well said. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this particular session. Value more my loyal customers and try to design a new plan. So, Eglantina, you just put in LTV. So I'm just going to quickly, for those on this session who do not know what LTV is the lifetime value of a customer. And what that actually means is the total revenue you expect to get from a customer over time. So from the moment I first sell to them to the moment I stop selling to them, what is the total amount of revenue that I will do with them? And that's kind of the lifetime value of that customer. And Eglantina, first, it's so important to know that number over time. But the second one, and I'm going to give you my philosophy. My philosophy is that my goal in most businesses, not all businesses, I think if you were selling cars, you might care about the value of a specific deal. But for me, philosophically, it's not about the value of one deal. It's about the lifetime value of that customer. And so my focus is always trying to make sure that how I price things today actually ensures that I maximize lifetime value, not the value of the deal today. Because if I charge too much today, they'll never come back. And so that's a really important sort of point. Hey, everybody, just before we get fired up, I'm just going to step away briefly just to grab something. I'll be right back. And so, Luann, you can just kind of keep chatting with folks, and then I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Eglantina, I see it related to reputation risk. Absolutely. Yeah, it's all about customer. So another point that is very closely related to LTV is CAC, or customer acquisition cost. I'm just going to type it here in the chat. And so why lifetime value of a customer is also very important is because customer acquisition costs, it's very expensive to acquire new customers. And so one of the things that we're going to be talking about today in your sales strategy is, raising capital and focusing on your revenue. And so if you focus on your revenue, it's a lot cheaper to keep your customers than it is to acquire a new one. And so those two acronyms are pretty closely related, and you'll see those used in tandem quite a bit. All good?
Yeah, that's great. So why don't we officially get started? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. And yeah, really excited to dig in, everyone. And I'm just going to make sure that you guys can all see this, which is great. If you do not know this picture is from a movie called Jerry Maguire, and I'm going to pop that into chat. Hopefully some of you have seen that movie. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's a great love story, but it's actually also a pretty good story about sales and customer experience. So enjoy it if you haven't seen it already. But why don't we dig in again for everybody who's just late in joining? Down below the ask a question button, start the questions coming now, because I think there's so many challenges and risks and uncertainty in sales. And so it's really a great opportunity to dig in. But just to kick things off, I want to thank EU for Innovation for allowing us to have this session. Eglantina, yeah, love and business. First time I saw they go together. Eglantina, I'm going to say something, which is spring is my baby, right? And your company is your baby. Like, if there's one truth about business, is that business is about love. We love our ideas and we're passionate about helping our customers. And so, so love and business every day. But just to again, thank EU for Innovation for hosting this webinar series. Erikens is on from EU for Innovation. If you guys want to access this recording as well as the past recordings, Erikens can help with that. And so really excited to cover this topic. And just to remind everybody who is on this call, my name is Keith Ippel, and I'm the CEO of Spring. And Spring is an organization that changes the world through entrepreneurship. We're based in Vancouver, Canada. We work in over 35 communities around the world. I've had the very good fortune of being in Albania several times now. And in addition to that, Spring is my fourth business. I had 3 tech startups before that. And so part of what I'm doing here is not only bringing kind of this experience of Spring, but also my own experience as a 4-time entrepreneur. And Luann, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, everybody, and great to see a couple of familiar names again. My name is Luann Tolosa, and I am a program manager and facilitator here at Spring Activator. Here, I get to use my technical knowledge, my corporate experience, and entrepreneurial background to help others make the world a better place. So for me, I end up working in corporate in the commercial real estate industry for just under a decade before deciding that I needed a change. So I decided to get my MBA, thinking that I would continue in corporate, but ended up pivoting into entrepreneurship and wanting to help other entrepreneurs as well. So from there, I started 2 businesses. My most recent venture, which is Suit, a women's direct-to-consumer clothing brand, which operates by e-commerce and in-person, which I continue to do today. So I'm very excited to chat with you all and kind of learn from everyone else as well.
Great, fantastic. So as we get going here, just a couple of things for everyone. So our agenda for today is, actually funny. I'm looking at this agenda thinking this might be our agenda from last week. But we're going to go through a sales agenda for today. And you've met myself and Luann, and so we're excited about that. What we're going to do today is we're going to cover off these kind of set of topics. Our goal for today is to make sure that we actually touch on each one of these. We're going to give some examples, but it's designed to get you guys to ask questions about what's happening in your business, so that we can give you kind of direct feedback and questions. And so really looking forward to going through these. So I want to start off with some interesting statistics and information. So Hubspot is considered to be probably the second or first most powerful inbound marketing and sales platform. Salesforce.com, for example, is really a CRM sales platform company. HubSpot really is that inbound marketing and how marketing interfaces with sales. And so when we think about our own sales efforts, as a starting point, it is important to note that website traffic for companies has gone up by an average of 13% since this crisis started. So it's really important to note that, there are more people going to your website now than ever before. And so that has an impact on our sales activity. The second one, of course, is engagement online is up. I think we all know that, but it's good to say that engagement is up for your business. So the question is how do we leverage that in our sales activity? And then the second one that I would say is that this is related to marketing. And so what's really interesting is that typically at all times and prior to COVID, email marketing is the highest conversion rate tool of any marketing tool that exists. It's still, even though we all hate spam emails, and we try and ignore them, they still are the highest conversion rate. But one thing that I want you to notice is look at the percentages, right? Like it's really interesting that people are getting, upwards of a 24% conversion rate or open rate on their emails. And so I think that's really important for us to note that when we are thinking about how we're doing sales, first, more people are hitting our website. Second, more engagement online. And third, people are opening up emails. So the goal is to make sure that we use these platforms and we use this technology well in support of our sales activities. So I just want to highlight some of this information as a starting point. And if you guys have any questions at all on these elements, I'm more than happy to dig in. Luann with Suit, her startup, has also done a fair amount of work around marketing, email marketing as well. And so happy to have both of us dig in. So do ask some questions there if you have them. But with some of these interesting trends that are happening over the last few weeks, what I was hoping to do right now is actually start off with a bit of a survey. And so we have a feature which is called a poll feature. And so, Luann, I'll get you to maybe fire it in. Yep. And the question here is, what has been the impact on sales so far? And so the potential answers are no change. The second one is big drop. The third one is big increase. And then the third one is I'm afraid to ask. Just in case you're kind of afraid to look, which is fair, So yeah.
All right,
so
cool.
Now you will see at the bottom of your screen, you will see that under the poll, we have what has been the impact on sales so far for you. So again, at the bottom of the screen, and then you can just hit your vote. So have you seen a big increase, a big drop, no change, or I'm afraid to ask? And so, yeah, if you guys can just put your answers in there, that'd be great. And we'll start to pop those in.
I would love to hear from the people that have voted for big increase, because I would be very curious which industries, what company.
Yeah. So keep the questions coming, or keep the responses coming, I should say. So great. So now we're starting to see big drop. And first, I want to highlight something for those who've responded to big drop, which is, as you can see already by the survey results, and if anybody else wants to add in their answer, because I know there's more people on the call, the reality is that you're not alone, right? There's at least 6 people on this call, now 7 who have had a big drop. That is very consistent with what Luann and I are seeing around the world. We're seeing it in Vancouver. We're seeing it in Vietnam. We're seeing it in Peru. We're seeing it in Nicaragua, Albania, of course. And so you're definitely not alone. And so that's actually the purpose of this session. The purpose of this session is to see if we can't change that situation around. And so really appreciate you guys diving in on that. If you have any final votes, then do please put that into the poll just so we have that. And so what we want to do now is we want to dig in and talk a little bit about this kind of process. And I do want to start with this topic here, which is focusing on revenue versus raising capital. And the reason I say that is because sometimes when we are at this place, I do find that some entrepreneurs will immediately try and go to the place of raising capital. And so my encouragement is that typically in the first 3 to 6 months of a recession, the amount of capital that is available from investors drops. It does not go to zero, but it drops significantly. And so if you're hoping for capital to solve your problem, it probably won't happen. And so if that is true, what we need to do is focus on revenue to ensure that we get to the other side. I will give you an interesting statistic, which is if you look at the past 2 recessions, so 01 to 03 and then 08, 09, during the time of those recessions, the total amount of investment deals has actually been the same as before and after, which is really interesting. So it's not like capital goes away. What happens is that it drops very low in the first few months, and then the investors make up for it afterwards. But you need to survive to then have that opportunity down the road. So I just want to make sure that that's kind of our starting point. So with that in mind, we're going to just focus here on sales. And so sales strategy is I think at a time like this is a luxury. It's an important topic, but when we talk about sales strategy, it assumes that we actually know what we're trying to do. And to our point here on this slide, we need a new approach for selling in this new world. And so, for example, with we're picking a brewery here as an example, we have seen breweries where typically you would sell business to business, you would sell business to consumer. Business to business is the traditional way. Sell to restaurants, sell to stores that sell alcohol, sell to bars, right? Like those are the places where traditionally a brewery would sell. And now, we're seeing places where they're selling directly to consumers, where they're, finding new businesses to sell to, where they're changing how they sell in this process in order to make sure that they can find a new way through this process. And so the reason I'm sharing this with you is because I think it's really important to note that sales strategy, you had a sales strategy prior to COVID. Now, some or all of that strategy is out the window. And so now what we need to do is we need to know that we need to get back to our sales strategy, but we need some information and we need some feedback before we can kind of revisit it in full. And so I think that's a really important place to start. And sales tactics is actually really where we want to focus our efforts right now. And so as a part of this, what we want to do is we want to kind of follow what we describe as kind of like this 5-step process. So one is we want to define what we think our new sales tactics are. So for example, you might say, oh, Keith has just told me that more people are opening up emails. So what I'll do is I'll actually start using emails as a primary sales tactic. So you're going to define a set of sales tactics, and from those tactics, you then need to make your list of action items. So what you will actually do in order to achieve and put those tactics into place. And that I think should be in a set of schedules. So my recommendation is a 1 week, a 1 month, and a 3-month schedule. And so then you can slot in the action items for what you need to do and when, because that schedule of 1 week, 1 month, and 3 months will give you the structure to kind of review what is working and what's not working. And you keep resetting your 1 week, and then you keep resetting your 1 month as you go through. Now, you'll notice here under step 3 that we have this topic, which is to get calling and learning. Now, calling will depend on what type of business you have, right? So if you have a business to business company, then you're going to get on the phone and Zoom, WhatsApp, Viber, whatever tool you use to talk to your customer. So you will actually start calling. In the case of business to consumer, some of you will have email, so you can use email. Some of you will engage and talk to people on social media. So there's different ways to talk to people. We use the term get calling as a generic term to say somehow you're going to connect and engage with your customer base. The closest you can get to talking to someone, the better, because then you can really hear their language and they can talk, they can open up. It can be a conversation. So maybe Luann, if you want to share just kind of conversationally how you like to do it.
Yeah. So what I was going to say about just Keith's last point there is that's why we mentioned in our last session to turn off your automation, because when you have these automatic conversations that are happening, you're not part of that conversation anymore. And so with a schedule that has an email campaign, for example, going out without you knowing, those responses aren't getting back to you and you're not understanding what the customers actually need. One of the things for defining your tactics, we're going to get to that in the next slide, but understanding what are all the different tactics or action items of how you're actually going to implement your sales strategy is a great way to kind of put everything out there. But to Keith's second point of making a list of action items, what are those priorities? What are the most important tactics that need to get done right away? So to the 1 week strategy versus the 1 month, you're not going to be able to do all your tactics all at once. So breaking them up into easier digestible chunks that can be implemented and executed. So yeah, to Keith's great points, defining your tactics is number 1. What are the things you're going to do to execute this new sales strategy? Making a list, which tactics are the most priority, which are the most important. 3, get communicating, get emailing, get talking to your customers, understanding what works, what doesn't. And we haven't gone to point 4, but I'm going to go into it here. But assess your organization's ability to implement. So going back to our last conversation about knowing your runway, knowing your resources, and based on what your customers' feedback is, what can your organization do right now? And what can they actually go and execute and organize? Or organization can actually go and execute, sorry. And then the last point, implementing what you learned. What have you heard from your customers? What are the parameters or your box that you need to play in because of your limited resources? And then being able to execute your sales strategy.
Yeah. So Luann, I actually think this is a great time for us, kind of a spontaneous poll. And so everyone, you just heard Luann describe number 4 is what are the resources you have? And if you have limited resources, what can you do? And so I'm going to put a point on that, which is most of you, like most businesses around the world, have no resources to spend on marketing and sales, right? It's just your time. So the question that we're going to put into the poll is, how much money do you have to spend on sales and marketing? So that's the poll question. And then the potential answers are 0, and then very limited, or I have lots, right? So which one is it? And let's I think get into that topic, because sometimes I think there is a belief, and you'll see, by the way, if you scroll down, yeah, so already some people are starting to answer, and which is great. And so yeah, so some people are saying, yeah, so already very limited is winning the day. And so, but it is important to note that sometimes when we have very limited or 0, I think a lot of us are in a place where it's like, well, then I can't do anything. And actually my comment is, I think that's actually when you can actually do more. And the reason is because it actually forces you to get creative. And so my ask of everyone on this call is, for those who answered very limited or 0, ask a question now in the ask a question box about how you can do marketing in your in your business with limited budget. And so would love to hear, what questions you have about that. So just use that ask a question button down below.
And you know that we have a bunch of people on this call. So if Keith and I don't have an answer to this, you have the opportunity to go and brainstorm with your peers in the chat. So we would love to hear about, what kind of questions about marketing you have and how we can all get creative and all brainstorm on your one idea. So a lot of heads to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just talk a little bit about more about sales tactics and some of the ideas that you can actually put into place. Bonus marks for anybody other than Erkins who can name who the person is in the photo.
Keith was
I know Erkins will know, but I'm curious if other people will know who this is.
Oh,
Glory, nice. That was fast. Well done.
Keith and I had an ongoing bet of how many people would actually know who this person is.
Yeah. Yeah. For anybody who does not know, thank you, Gloria. I like to say, I don't say I'm older. I'm say I'm more mature. But yeah, if anybody wants to know who Olivia Newton-John is, you can look up that video. It's pretty hilarious. Yeah. So with some sales tactics, I do want to touch on a couple things. So one is direct sales calls is obviously one potential tactic. I'm sure many of you are doing it right now. We're actually going to talk a little bit about exactly how to do direct sales calls in this crisis and in the recession. The second one, a lot of people don't think about this. It's kind of like one of the most obvious things to do that people forget, which is to run webinars and workshops. Now, in COVID, you can actually do this online, no different than this one. And then after the lockdown and when everybody's kind of moving around again, then doing them in person, webinars and workshops are fantastic ways to gather people together who have the same problem. It is a way to show thought leadership. It is a way to establish and build your brand. It is a way to validate your solution, and it is a way to pre-sell. And so I think it's really valuable to kind of remember that one. Now, digital marketing, obviously lead generation and opening new markets. If there's one thing that I think we're all learning already is that for lead generation in new markets, we are in a place right now where the border has become a little bit invisible, right? There are no borders because we're all online. And so it is an opportunity now for you to start testing whether or not people in new markets, whether it is, North Macedonia or Kosovo, or it is Turkey or London, UK, US, doesn't matter where, but there is an opportunity for you to kind of dig in and open up. I'm going to give you guys an interesting data point. Late last year, Vietnam and the EU came together with a free trade agreement. And the reason I share that, I know Albania is not yet a part of the EU, but what I want to highlight is that Vietnam is actually developed enough now that they can do a free trade agreement with the EU. Now, Vietnam is a market of 100 million people in one country. That is an example of maybe a possibility to reach out into a new market. So just kind of putting these pieces in place, and then pricing strategies. And Luann, maybe if you want to talk a little bit about how you can use different pricing strategies as a sales tactic to get feedback and then kind of learn from the marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. So pricing strategies. At this moment in time, we all know that there are not a lot of people who can go and have disposable income and afford to buy maybe your full service right now. But there are probably other pricing strategies that they can potentially afford. So that can include subscription offers versus, say, one-time fees. So maybe they can't pay the full $100 right now, but they can afford $10 payments across 6 months. Are there installment plans? Are there premium models? So I've had that experience with my own company because we are a luxury premium brand. They're a lot more expensive than a lot of other kind of clothing, but they can afford, programs where they can do an installment plan. So think about your business model and think about your pricing strategy. Is it something that can be divvied up into a more digestible way for your consumers? Or is it something that maybe they can pay for later? So this decrease in disposable income is a temporary thing. So once they can afford it, you want to be that person or that brand that they think about when they can.
Yeah, well shared. Yeah, well shared. So I think the important part to remember is that as you are starting, especially for all the people who said big sales drop, there's a couple things that we think about. So first, we want to start to ask ourselves the question right now: are there different ways? Are there different tactics that we can use to get to customers, whether they are existing customers or new customers? I think is really, really important. Now, I'm going to highlight something. Eglantina made the comment earlier where she said, hey, I'm focusing on my most loyal customers. And so what she's doing is she's actually, under her sales tactics, what she's doing is she's focusing on the segment that she knows she can return to and sell. Now, Olsi, you made an interesting comment, at least I thought, which was you were saying that, early on in the process, you actually saw sales go up. And then in April, your sales went down. So you kind of went up and then back down. So Olsi, I think you said you're in the FMCG space. What type of product are you selling? And if you could pop that into chat, it'd be great if you could do that. And then I just want to use it as a bit of a case study example. So just curious, Olsi, if you're, and I hope I'm saying your name right. If not, the next time I'm in Tirana, I will definitely buy you a beer if I'm saying it wrong. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Mondelez. Yeah. Great. So the important part for all of us is that we need to ask ourselves the question, what is hindering our sales? What is causing sales to go up and then down, or what just caused our sales to go down? And so in your particular case, the first question is, and I'm going to give you my perspective on this, which is, you are in a space which we call pocket luxuries, right? And so Milka chocolate, Cadbury chocolate, by the way, you're already my best friend. Clearly we have to meet for a beer so that we can exchange beer for product. But the reality is that in a recession, sales of pocket luxuries always goes up. So wine, beer, chocolate, right? These things go up. And the reason, of course, is because people can't afford the big luxuries. They can't afford, kind of world travel. They can't afford all the fancy stuff. And so they look for small indulgences or pocket luxuries to make them feel good. And so in many respects, Olsi, I think the challenge for you is in distribution channels and how you potentially could get your product out to the customer when they can't get to the store. Because you're kind of in this interesting place where your sales have dropped. When the lockdown lifts, you should see sales go right back up again. But people also have gotten into the habit at some level, they've gotten into the habit of getting product delivered to them. And so there is this interesting question for you is, if you want to both help sales rebound, but then also hopefully help sales grow, can you start to create packages that allow people to get home delivery? And so implementing e-commerce, other e-commerce channels, which become indirect channels for you. What's been interesting, and I'm going to use an example for Olsi, and this example is called Go Java, which is based in Toronto. And I think I've talked about it in a prior session, but Go Java, what they actually did is they deliver coffee to offices, but of course, lockdown, no one's in an office. So what they actually did is they sold the product to direct delivery to the customer, And they were able to actually make their sales rebound. The fear of our customers have the fear that they should have problems to get the goods, so they create extra stock. Yeah, and that is, Luann, I think you and I have seen that in many places, right? Where initially people stocked up. And yeah, absolutely, Olsey. I think, that is a really common challenge. And I think what we have seen, so I don't know about you guys, but toilet paper was the number one thing in Hong Kong. It was the number one thing in Canada. As soon as the fear started, then all the stores were gone, sold out of toilet paper.
Sanitizer, all the things that people were afraid of losing out on.
Yeah. And so what's interesting, Olsey, is that in April in Canada, the biggest selling item is flour and baking soda, baking powder. So once people actually settled in, then they're like, well, I'm stuck at home with my kids. I need to start baking. And so what's interesting in your case is that you can actually say, well, if people are spending more time at home, what can they do with products like Milka, Oreo, Cadbury, Philadelphia, cream cheese? What can they do with these products while they're still stuck at home to get them to actually use more to entertain themselves and their kids? So I think also there's an opportunity for you to use things like social media marketing and email marketing if you have it, but definitely social media marketing to talk to people about like recipes using Oreo as like a pie crust. I saw this really funny one where somebody was putting crushed Oreos on top of pasta. It looked so gross, but you know what? People use it. Yeah, exactly, right. But I would say as well, you could do the same thing with Milka. You could do the same thing with Cadbury. Like, how can people use these products when they're at home? Yeah, Anita, no surprise, right? People are using that stuff. So I think also try and use that, leverage that fact that people are spending a lot of time at home cooking and baking and keeping their kids entertained. But the other one too is, can you start to create some direct channels to facilitate the process? And these are things we experiment. We don't have the answers collectively. What we do is we have ideas, which I think is fantastic. Yeah, so great. Thanks for sharing that, Olsey. Really appreciate it. Any additional thoughts, Luann, on distribution channels? Because I think that's such an important part of sales that a lot of people forget about.
Yeah, I was just I just went down the deep end of brainstorming with Olsey about how can they go and get in front of their customers. So I was thinking YouTube videos, webinars, and that whole online channel of showing people how to bake and how to use and incorporate their products into, to your point, like the baking and the home things that they're doing. Another thought, I've seen an increase in gardening and gardening supplies in terms of people wanting to do everything in their homes. And so all of these distribution channels, your strategies, your tactics, these are all going to be experiments of what works best. So yeah, I think having a platform to go and tell people about your products. So if it's webinars, if that's a YouTube video of how to bake or how to garden, I think those are great channels that can be experimented and changed as well. You're not tied to a channel once you go down a certain channel either.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give you guys a name, which, you know, is one part in response to what Eglantina and Anita just shared. And also one part, I think, inspiration as entrepreneurs. And so the name is Edward Bernays. And so has anyone ever heard of Edward Bernays before? I bet you it's zero.
I haven't, no.
So Edward Bernays was Laura, yes, thank you, one person, excellent. Hey, look at this. You guys are like crushing it. That's two more than I've had in any webinar so far. So Edward Bernays is the nephew of Sigmund Freud, or was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And so Eglantina, don't think about it as propaganda. So Edward Bernays, he was trying to make his own way, like in the world as a business person. And so he immigrated to the US and he immigrated to New York City. And Yeah, exactly. And so what was interesting is that what he actually did is he went to Madison Avenue, which is really the epicenter globally for advertising. But back in the early 1900s, it really wasn't a very big deal. But Edward Bernays went to all the big advertisers and said, I think I can use my uncle's, theories and methodologies and process around psychology and psychiatry to help you sell more. So Edward Bernays is the godfather, is the grandfather of modern advertising. And so the reason I'm sharing that is because, Eglintina, customer behavior in a crisis, customer behavior during a holiday, customer behavior over Christmas, customer behavior in a recession. At the end of the day, there are moments in time, seasons, situations, and these are all places where we as an entrepreneur can speak into that. It is all human psychology. And Edward Bernays really set the foundation for that. And so I do think that what's really important in this process is that we want to remember that as entrepreneurs, human psychology aside, so yes or no, at the end of the day, when it comes to a crisis or a recession, the best human psychology based selling won't help you unless you actually solve a need, because consumers won't have the extra money to spend, right? So it's just, in good times, psychology really works incredibly well for you. Yes, Laura, I know the documentary you're talking about. If you do have that link, I would highly recommend it. I don't know about all you guys. I'm just about out of stuff to watch on Netflix, except for the Michael Jordan documentary, which I started watching. So yeah, do include that, Laura. I think it's great. Good learning for everyone. So thank you for sharing that.
If we have a question in the question box here.
Great.
What is the best method of discounting prices in this period without being stuck at that price point?
Wow. So the best method of discounting is don't discount. And so I am going to explain, which is when we discount our price, the challenge is that our consumers, our customers, become elephants. And so what I mean by that is our customers will remember that price forever. So if you have a product today for €1 and tomorrow you want to discount that price to 50 cents until the recession is over, the customer will always remember that 50-cent price. And it's very hard to get them back up again. So what we want to do, IB, is we want to find other ways to change the price without discounting. And I'm going to start to share some ideas here. And if other people have ideas in chat, please do share them. So one is bulk packaging. So in other words, if it's €1 for one, then you could say buy 10 for €8. But now they can't say one is 50 cents, right? Like they can say, oh, if I buy in bulk, I save money in bulk. So the second one is to change the size of the package itself, or the offering, or the product, or the service. And so I'd be curious if you can describe what your product is in chat, and we can give some more specific examples. But I've seen people where they actually change the size of the offering, where you can have a reduced price for that offering. A third, and Luann, I'm going to get you to share this one, which is to actually create a whole new product line that can be priced differently. It's basically the same stuff, but it's actually positioned in a different way and can be priced in a different way. So over to you.
Yeah, for sure. So that's what I've had to do with our, like I mentioned before, our suits start at $700 or $800 depending. And so obviously that's a very big chunk to take off right now. So what we've done through our customer discovery is that my customers, they're still wanting to dress up for work. It's just not today. It might be in the next 12 to 18 months. But they're also more willing to buy something if it's a lower price point. So I had to go back to my manufacturers and talk to them and see what is something that we can do to lower our cost of goods, and what can we do to create basically a whole new line that accommodates these types of customers. And so what has happened is that, I guess, market segment, or that position of that market, has become exponentially bigger for me because of the fact that I can now sell to people that are willing to pay for a lower price point. So I still keep the people that are more willing to pay at the $700-800 mark, but now I have a whole new customer at the lower end. So not only have I expanded my product line, I have 2 new customers that I can service. And then there might be some customers who actually still want to buy the higher price point, but they can't do it all at once. And so this goes back to what I said earlier about the pricing strategy. Can you break down your bigger lump sum into smaller digestible chunks? And so for those people that are still willing to pay $800, they'll pay $200 here, $200 here, until it's completely paid off. So there's a lot of creativity you can get into without actually lowering your price point on a permanent basis. So I haven't discounted our main product line, but I have created a new one, and I've gotten a little bit more creative of how they can actually afford the full price.
Yeah. So great description. Now I'm actually going to take a variation of what Luann just shared. So IB, thank you for sharing. It's a SaaS platform for SMEs. So there's a couple places you can go right away. One is that you can create tiers of offers, right? So there's like a bronze, silver, gold, and you actually break out your feature set so that they get increasing levels of features for level prices. So often in your case right now, what I would say is you would call what you're offering today silver. And then what you would do is remove a few premium features and then create a new bronze level. And then in your product roadmap, when you add some new features, that becomes gold. And so releasing that, say, in about the fall, like October. So what you do is try and create a second version which has reduced features. We'll call that a bronze. So you have bronze and silver. And then say in September, October, you announce gold, because some of your potential customers will actually be thriving. They will be growing and they will want those additional features, and they'll pay for them. So human nature, speaking of human psychology, people require the perception of choice, right? If you offer only one thing, human nature is people don't like that. It would be like when you go to the grocery store, Milka. If there was only one kind of Milka, plain milk chocolate, probably no one would buy it. Instead, you go to the grocery store and there's 8 different kinds of Milka because people like choice. So IB, I would encourage you to create choice by going like bronze, silver, gold, or you can pick how you describe it. But the other thing that I would say is, until you do that, I would encourage you to take Erkin's strategy, which is I can pay per month for your SaaS product, or you can offer me an annual subscription, say 11 months for the price of 12, or sorry, 12 months for the price of 11, or 12 months for the price of 10 months, right? Which is our bulk packaging. So I would say starting on Monday, IB, you could actually, like, so today's Tuesday, so give yourself a couple of days, right, to create your sales messaging. And then what you could do is go to everybody and say, hey, pay for a year and you get a discount for the year, right? So not just the base offering. And then the second one is create choice, bronze, silver, and then add gold later. That would be my recommendation. And yeah, I think what Luann shared is the idea. What we're talking about is a variation of freemium. And what I don't know, IB, is whether or not you can afford to offer free, right? If you can, offer free, but if you can't, then we just have increasing levels from cheap to medium to expensive.
Zoom, I just put that in there as a good example because Zoom has individual free accounts. They also have Zoom meetings that I think it's $14 a month. And then they have Zoom webinars, which is incrementally more expensive. But exactly what Keith's point is, every level has a different set of features that positions itself differently for every customer that you want to serve. Yeah, so there's a lot of different examples out there that you can search. So Spotify, Zoom, yeah, we'll see diversity of offers, exactly.
So I just put in IB in the chat that if you do go to freemium, just know that right now the average conversion rate for SME freemium is about 10%. So if you offered free for every, kind of 10 people, one of them would actually then convert to pay. And so that, just to give you a sense as to what the math would look like. But that's a really, really great example, and I appreciate you raising it. So that's great. Cool. All right, so keep those questions coming. That was a great question, IB, and would love to see more questions from everybody, so keep it coming. But this next topic that I absolutely love to talk about, which is solution selling. And so for solution selling, and Luann, I think your experience as well with Suit during this crisis is a really, really great case study. So I think every single entrepreneur on this call wants to be in a place where you are thinking about solution selling. And so solution selling is where we talk to customers and we get them to tell us about their needs and about their problems and about their challenges before we ever talk about our solution. And so what we do is we get them to open up about what challenges they're facing. And then what we do is we can then respond with whatever solution we may or may not have for them. And so, so Luann, maybe just as a starting point, if you want to share some of the experience that you've had with Suit, it'd be great.
Yeah, so one of the things, what I've found is that when you talk to your customers, they'll have a million different things or different, problems that they would love solved. And as a company, you kind of have to look at what you have in your infrastructure, in your skill set, in your resources, to be able to answer their needs. So that's one thing I found out. And so you look at your skill set of what can you actually offer above and beyond what you're already offering today. And you have to be very selective of that. I think with Suit, in terms of, I've talked about 57 customers, which I found out yesterday from Keith, is not the record. The record apparently for the amount of customers was 155 customers in 6 days. Yeah. So if you have the caffeine level to go and do that, please do. So I have a lot of homework to go back to the drawing board and talk to more customers. But in the 57 customers that I've talked to, they don't need clothing or premium price clothing right now, but they need a lot of different things. They need help with career pivots. They need help with resume building. They've been furloughed. So can I provide that as a solution right now? Yeah, I think I have a really good platform to go do that. So you look at your business and I think, what else are your skill sets of your employees, of your runway? What can you do in addition? So I'm very lucky that I can sell a product, but I can also sell now a service. And whether that service lasts after this COVID or the recession, I don't know. But this is all about testing and iterating and testing out an MVP to see if this will be a long-term permanent solution. But that is not something that I would have figured out if I had not gone out and talked to 57 different customers right now, which I will talk to more of after today. So.
Yeah, and Luann, I think so my encouragement, so a couple things that I would say. One is that the more customers that you talk to and do solution selling with, one, you find out what the real problem is. Two, you find out what is your best solution. So for example, IB, you have a SaaS platform for SMEs. When you talk to as many of those SMEs as you can, that will actually tell you what should go into bronze and what should go into silver. Don't guess, right? Get the customer to tell you what they care about. And if you had a cheaper solution, what would they need? And then if you had a more expensive solution, what do they want, right? So I think that's important. And then, but here's the important one. We were just talking about human psychology. When we go to sell, we're using our language, our words, right? When you talk, and Luann knows this, right? She talked to 57 customers. Now when she sells, she's not using Luann's words, she's using their words, right? So what language does your customer use to describe the problem? So if I use Olsey as an example, her customers right now are not saying, yeah, neuromarketing, I agree. The reality with Olsey is that, a lot of people probably aren't saying, geez, I really would like a chocolate bar right now, What they're actually saying is, I need something to keep my kids busy. And we have now found like a new passion or a new love for cooking at home. Give me new recipes. Help me keep my kids busy. These are the words they're using, not us, right? And then what that does is it allows us to shape not only our sales messaging, but it allows us to reshape our marketing messaging as well. So that is the secret that no one talks about when we talk about talking to customers, because we just assume that we're selling. But the hidden secret is that they're giving us their language that we can then repeat back to them and increase both satisfying their needs, but also increasing our revenue. So I think that's a really important kind of takeaway. Yeah.
Writing that into the chat, and we do have a question that just popped up.
Great.
For us who provide digital products, can we start charging even if the product is not fully ready, given a limited runway?
So this is an interesting question, because it is a question that, for the most part, is a question that is specific to technology businesses. And I think it's a really important question, because IB, you have made the assumption that the product is not fully ready. And so I'm actually going to give you a case study. And that case study is a little company called Twitter. And so when Twitter first launched back in 2007, it looked a lot like what we know today. You know, you would, at the time, it was only 140 characters and hit post, right? Like that's all you could do. There's no photos, there's no video, there's no long form, but you know, the basics were there, right? You create an account, 140 characters and hit post. The problem is the product wasn't ready. And so, and in particular, the product was not ready because it could not handle a load. And so for those who may be old enough to remember, I think it was early 2009, in London, there was an event called the Tube bombing. And so somebody bombed the London subway system. And it was a dramatic event, and it was a terrorist event, but it was also the first event where people used Twitter to communicate rapidly about what was happening. And Twitter crashed, right? It crashed for, I don't know, I think it was like an hour and a half. Like they couldn't get it back up again. There's too much load, and it brought the system down. And you know what happened the next day? Everybody used it, and they used it again, and they used it again. And here's Twitter today. And the reason I share that is because not fully ready is usually a state of mind for you, the founder, not for the customer. So my encouragement to you is I would push the product out and find out if you have enough in the product for people to pay. And that's your test, right? So I think what I would do is I would put it out there. I would select a small group of customers. My encouragement to you would be, if you can, 20 to 30 SMEs, and ask them to pilot the project for you. Now, here's the important part. Don't ask them to do it for free. Say, I will let you use my product at no cost in exchange for a case study and a testimonial. So still have fair exchange of value. But what you want to do, IB, is get people to give you feedback on the product without price being in the way for the first 20. Then the first 20 will confirm with you if the product is really ready or not. And that's all you can do. So go to 20 people and say, I will give it to you for free in exchange for a case study and testimonial if it works for you. But always, and this is for everyone on the call, you know, giving stuff away for free, you always have to make sure that people know why you're doing it, because otherwise they'll just expect it for free forever, especially for you software guys on this call. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, that's my recommendation.
I have another example, just not, I don't think they didn't launch right away, but another example that comes to mind is Dropbox. So the file sharing service. Mm-hmm. So in terms of them, so the CEO, what he did was create a video And it was a video that was completely animated, completely manual, but it showed how Dropbox actually worked. And they launched just a simple landing page, and they had the video of how Dropbox actually is used and workable. And no coding had been done, but when they launched the landing page, 70,000 people signed up within 24 hours. This was before funding. This was before writing a single line of code. And they took that case study of those 70,000 signups in 24 hours, went to investors, showed them how many people were interested, even though there was no product yet. There was no testing of an actual product yet, just an MVP of a video. So that was another example that popped into mind, that was something that was used without having a lot of cash. They didn't have any cash. They didn't code anything yet, but they showed how it worked via a simple animated video. So I thought that was one of my favorite examples of an MVP. So very much similar to how can I do something without a lot of cash, without a lot of runway.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually a really, really good example. And I think that Dropbox video really helped Dropbox to understand what customers really felt that they needed. And so, Luann, fantastic example and great question, IB, again. So for everybody on the call, IB is currently winning the question challenge. And so IB, I will be buying you beer when I come to Tirana and Albania next, assuming you're in Albania. And so if anybody wants the competition for who Keith buys the beer for first, then you need to ask some questions. So there you go. All right, so why don't we keep going? Keep the questions coming. Great questions, great comments as well. So I think the important part is, as you're having these solution sellings calls, keep track of the calls. You can use paper, you can use a spreadsheet, you can use a Word document, you can use a CRM. Earlier, I saw somebody mentioned HubSpot earlier. Say that again.
I think it was Dorian.
Yeah, Dorian. Yeah. So Dorian, thanks for mentioning HubSpot. And so we actually use HubSpot as our CRM at Spring. And so as we do these kind of solution selling calls, we use HubSpot as a way to track that information. What we're trying to do is figure out what are all the needs, but what are the priorities, right? Like what really needs to be solved first, second, and third. And it's important to note, like if you guys really look at this list, notice that pricing is fourth. Arguably, it should be fifth. And the reason for that is what we need to do is we need to understand what the real needs are. How are they responding to different solutions or different packaging of solutions? And then also, how do they respond to different channels and delivery, like getting it to them? How do we do that? Whether it's in the software world or bricks and mortar or anything else. And then we can start to take a look at some of these next steps. And again, my encouragement to you is the more you talk to your customers, the more you'll find out what they actually want to buy, because everybody, like we talked about this, our sales have gone down. So we need to figure out what they will buy and when, right? And I think that that's an important part of this mix. And then in doing so, again, finding their language. And so, what are the patterns? How do we change our product? How do we change our marketing messaging? We've talked about that. We also talk about changes to our sales scripts. And making sure that we're actually saying the right things to people. And then we get a chance to update our approach. Just as a reminder for everyone, with a slide like this, you guys will be getting access to the recording. And so my encouragement to you is this particular slide, this is a checklist for you to go through. And my encouragement to you is that by I would say in about 2 weeks, you want to have your first answers to these questions if you don't have them already. And then you actually need to do it 3 more times. So the next time you're going to do this is when the lockdown is fully lifted. The next time you're going to do it is around about November, when hopefully COVID-19 is past and we are just in a recession. And I'm not saying that lightly because a recession is tough. So number one is when the lockdown is lifted. Number 2 is when we are just in a recession and we're heading around the holidays. And then point number 3 is whenever we start to hear that the bottom of the recession has passed and we are starting to recover. And the reason is because your customers' needs will actually change in all 3 of those times. So what you are doing today, you're going to repeat 3 times over the next 12 to 18 months. And the reason is because the world is changing for our customer. We need to be on top of that. And then we need to respond to it. And if you do that 3 more times after this, so a total of 4 times, I guarantee you'll win. I guarantee you will win your market, because you will be ahead of all of your competition, because you will have talked to the customer way before they have. And so do treat this as a checklist, and make sure that you have the answers. Now, this is my offer. And my offer to you is, if you go through this process of the checklist and you can't see the patterns, or you don't know what changes to make, do reach out to Luann and I in LinkedIn and say, I'm not seeing the patterns, or I can't see the changes. Reach out to us and then we'll help you through that. Because sometimes you just need a nudge, right? You just need somebody to help you kind of unlock that a little bit. And so maybe, Luann, if you want to just pop our LinkedIn profiles into the chat, and then my encouragement to you guys is do that.
Yeah.
And then while you're putting that in, I noticed you created a poll.
Because I was curious to see how many people in the group have actually created their sales script. And the reason why is because for me, I think I wasn't a huge fan. I'll be completely honest. I wasn't a huge fan of sales. As someone that comes from an operations background, as very much did not want to get into the sales mode. And by creating a sales script and understanding that when you have existing customers already, it's kind of a warm lead and it's not as intimidating as it sounds like. So in terms of writing a sales script, kind of laying out the conversations with your potential customers or even your new customers, it helps alleviate that fear a lot. I think one of the things that really was terrifying for me getting into this I guess point in time was going out, reaching to your customers and saying, how can I help you? And I don't seem like someone that's very shy, but it can still be a barrier to you. So writing your sales script and then going and actually picking up those first few phone calls has been very liberating. And I thought, if you don't have your sales script already, now's the time to start. And what Keith had mentioned earlier, feel free to reach out to us, me, Keith. If you want us to look over that sales script before you go out and talk to these strangers or talk to your existing customers, we're more than happy to kind of review that with you.
Yeah. So thank you. And by the way, we've had 4 people who have said they have no sales script. So first, thank you. Thank you for being honest. I think that's really important. Second, the trick I just put in the chat, because saying, sales script sounds like work, right? It's actually not. All we need to do is the next time you make a sales call, just on your computer, open up a Zoom. Sorry, I put in Slack. Sorry, I meant Zoom. Sorry.
All of the platforms we've been using, Zoom.
Yeah. So yeah. So what you do is have Zoom up on your laptop, and when you're ready to start a sales call, then just hit record, and then you record everything that you say while you're talking on your phone, right? And then at the end, hit stop, and then just replay that recording and type it out. So it's a fast way for you to be like, oh, this is what I said. But when you replay it, then you're like, oh, that one question, I could actually rephrase it. I could say it a different way, or I could do this, or I could add this. And then here's the trick, bonus marks. Bonus marks is that once you have your script, share it with a friend who is also an entrepreneur or a salesperson and say, this is my sales script. Can you give me feedback? Can you give me suggestions on how I can make changes? And so I don't know if there's any basketball fans on this call, but this Michael Jordan documentary is on Netflix right now. And so the reason I mention it, though, is because there was an interview and an article on ESPN. And so I'm just going to put it in here because I think it's really important to note. And it was about the Kobe Bryant and MJ friendship. And so, yeah, that MJ documentary is so good. I agree. But the reason I'm sharing it is go to ESPN website. There is an article about the friendship between Kobe Bryant and MJ. Everyone in this call, you want to be like Kobe. And I'm going to explain. Kobe created a friendship with MJ. MJ was the expert, right? And Kobe was the up-and-coming guy. And so he just kept asking questions. Every time he would see MJ, Michael Jordan, he would just keep asking questions. How can I get better at basketball? How can I get better at basketball? Constantly asking questions. That's actually one of the reasons why Kobe became so good. And everybody needs an MJ. I completely agree, Luann. And so my encouragement to you is when you create your first sales script, share it. Share it with someone that you know will give you good feedback. And then you'll have a better sales script. And that's how we start to create this rebound on our sales as we get better at it. But remember, for the next 3 months, solution sell. Don't call someone and say, hi, I have a product. Don't do that. Say, hi, how are you doing? How are you doing in this crisis? How are you doing in this recession? How can I help? What do you really need? That's where we want to go.
And I think, and in terms of accountability partners, treat us like your MJ. If you have a script, if you don't have someone that you feel comfortable going and saying, I need help on this, reach out to us because that's what we're here for. So
yeah, great. Yeah, so really appreciate that. Great. So we're actually heading into the final 15 minutes of this particular session. So if you do have some questions that you'd like to get answered before the session ends, do put those questions down below. Great. So I'm going to give a case study, and case study here is Chop Value. Chop Value is a company that actually recycles chopsticks. So all those Chinese food, Japanese food restaurants that are out there, what they do is they take chopsticks and they turn them into furniture. Now, when the crisis hit, a lot of businesses and a lot of people stopped buying furniture. So what Chop Value actually did is they started to talk to their customers, and their customers talked about being stuck at home and working from home and how do they respond. And so as you can see, Chop Value actually created this like a line of limited edition products, which are essentially, let's call it lockdown survival products. And they actually were able to replace their revenue by adapting to this. And so all of these amazing wooden products are made out of recycled chopsticks. Yeah, Erikins. So to give context, and if you guys want a great business idea, in the last, I think it's 2 years, the number of chopsticks that Chop Value has recycled, 25 million just in Western Canada. Like extraordinary how many chopsticks. And so it's a huge opportunity that I think people can people can respond to. It's a great business idea, and they've actually done a really good job of pivoting. And in their case, it's important to note that not only did they change their product, but they actually added e-commerce as their number one sales channel, because previously they didn't have e-commerce. They just sold through distributors. And so for them, one is product, and then the second one is distribution. If anybody's curious, they actually have a franchise model. So if you wanted to franchise this into the Balkans, you could reach out to Chop Value. And if you do, say hi to Felix, because he's an amazing guy. So on rebooting sales or pivoting, these are the questions, is that if we start to solution sell, what if they don't have that problem right now? Or what if they don't like what I offer? What if they don't like the price? What if I can't get to them? These are kind of the burning questions that we have. And if you get stuck, I think, on one or more of these questions, this really is an opportunity for you as an entrepreneur to reach out for help, and think a little bit about, how you can deal with some of these tough questions that you go through. Because my encouragement to you is, I think about 90% of businesses should survive and thrive. There will be a very small subset of businesses that maybe should pause, while the crisis is on, and can be rebooted later. That is possible. But I do think that there's probably answers for each one of these questions. And maybe, Luann, just as you think a little bit about the process you've been on, where yours has been a little bit of adding a new product line, a little bit of pausing the old product line, and just kind of like how that thought process has gone through.
Yeah, I guess it hasn't been a difficult, I think, in terms of humility, in terms of ego, not being tied to the product that you're we were talking about this earlier about how much you love your business. I love my business and our vision, but not necessarily, it can be anything, because our vision is to be part of the stories of the women that inspire us. And that can be anything from products to help with careers, to help with pivoting, whatever that might be. So in terms of rebooting your sales and being able to answer those questions, I think I took a very, empathetic approach to it. And so, if they don't want my expensive product right now, but they are willing to buy a lower priced product right now, and I can help them in other ways, I'm more than open to going and doing that. And I think this plays into Eglantina's question here. And this goes back to your earlier points about rebooting your sales. Can we think that this is the right moment to link our business with sustainability? Customers will go to be sensitive about this, and will it be related to our sales? So is this the right time now to be questioning sustainability, and how do we go about incorporating everything we need in your product?
Yeah, great. That's fantastic. Do you think we should dive into this question?
Yeah. Sorry, I was talking about that question. So the question, okay. I kind of molded into the next question as I was talking about it, because I thought it was a really good pivot. But so Eglantina had asked, can we think this is the right moment to link our business with sustainability? Customers will go to be sensitive about this, and it will be related with our sales.
Yeah. Maybe, Eglantina, I'd be curious to hear what industry and sector you're in, because I do think that for some businesses, this is absolutely the right time to do that. I do think that for some businesses, maybe it's not. And so, Eglantina, if you can remind us what your business is, your product and service, or service, that would be great, because that, I think, would help me to answer the question. Because generally, what I would say is that, a lot of people are, asking the question about, can we do business better, or can we live better? This being stuck at home for weeks on end, I think has really caused people to kind of challenge and ask questions about why we do what we do and how we do it. So, for example, I'll give you guys, this is a very, very big example, but I think Austria and Sweden just closed their last 2 coal-powered energy plants, yesterday or this week. And so that's an example of people making big, big shifts in how they do business and how they do life. And so, so on a personal note, I think it depends. First, does your target customer care? And if they do, then I think you talk about it for sure. And then the second thing is, I think when you talk about sustainability, you want to talk about it in their words, not yours. So going back to solution selling, could there be some rule of thumb? My rule of thumb is the following. 1, does your target customer care? If they do, you have to talk about it. Number two is use their words based on your solution selling approach. So for example, in the case of Chop Value, for example, in Chop Value's case, what they're doing is they're actually selling beautiful product. So they're saying, here are beautiful products for the home or office. And by the way, in buying these, you are also helping to save the planet because we're recycling millions and millions of chopsticks. And so their message is one of beautifully designed product. Oh, by the way, it's actually sustainable, right? So that's their messaging. I have seen in other industries, especially in places like financial services and fintech, where it actually leads with sustainability. So invest for a better future, right? Which includes a sustainable future. So I would say and I'm giving my perspective on this, I think in retail product, I think it depends on your target audience, where often you will see that what you're saying is I have a great product and it helps sustainability and it drives sustainability. And I gave Chop Value as an example. I would say in fintech, you can actually lead more strongly with sustainability. Obviously, if you are in clean tech, you lead with sustainability, but you marry that with return on investment. So with clean tech, it's the combination of the two. I think with FMCG in particular, I would say the message is about how you run your business, because of course chocolate is chocolate, and you can expand your chocolate line to include organic, fair trade, which I think is hugely valuable. There's definitely a market for that. But as well, it's also how you run your business. How do you give back to the community? How do you support children, youth, people with disabilities, people at risk? Those would be definitely things that I would add. And then Luann, if you have other perspectives as well, or other industries, maybe as case studies per what Anita shared in chat.
Yeah, I think as companies, there's certain things that you can do to create an impact, and that can be internal or external. And whether that means that you're doing something externally forward-facing first, so if you're doing something that has to do with sustainability and that's your core business model, or are you creating a business that can create impact in other ways? And so Keith's earlier point about how do you do business, how do you treat your employees, how do you treat people that you interact with, that's a different format or a different model than doing an external facing way of making impact. So I think you do what you can has been my motto with my company, is do what you can to make a better positive impact. As startups, we have limited funds, limited resources, limited time. But as you start growing, as you start making more customers, more revenue, can you start increasing that impact and sustainability in other ways? So not taking everything down all at once, but incremental impact, incremental sustainability. I think that's how I've always approached it with my company.
Yeah, and as a retail product company, in your case, fashion, right? I think that those are really, really good examples.
Easter Island.
Yeah, Easter Island. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I 100% agree. And worth, if anybody's interested in Googling that, please do. I just gave a couple of other examples in different sectors. Patagonia on the clothing side, very focused on their target audience around sustainability. Genesis Capital, which is financial services, Chop Value that we mentioned earlier. So just to give a couple of extra examples. So great question. Thank you for that. We're just going to, with 2 minutes left, we're just going to make sure that we've covered everything off. Rapid Growth Academy is a good example of an organization that kind of rebooted their sales effort. And in particular, in their case, in talking to the marketplace, what Rapid Growth Academy found out was two things. Their existing customer segment no longer wanted what they were offering. They wanted a new online learning offering. And so what they actually did is they actually added a new product to respond to the existing market. But their existing product actually started to appeal to a whole new demographic, a whole new customer segment. So in their case, their sales pivoted, adjusted. So on one side, they started to sell to a new market. And then on the other side, they created a new product to then sell to the existing market. And so it's just kind of a cool example of a company that used their solution selling to find out what the marketplace needed and then responded in two parts to do that. And so just kind of giving that as a case study. So a couple of things just to touch on before we break. If you are product-based, offering pilots or proof of concepts, in many respects, IB, that's what we're referring to in your case, are offering a separate lower price product line. Luann's suit example is a great one. Finding ways to collaborate. Co-packaging was raised earlier, I think, by Laura. In kind, so ways to offer in-kind value. Under services-based, workshop and webinars are fantastic ways to offer lower price value and get people to engage if you're a service-based business. Smaller offerings, advisory services, so more what we call a la carte. Again, collaboration and in-kinds, I think, are great examples. And then just keeping in mind sales and marketing. Now, we're going to talk about marketing in the next section, or the next webinar, I should say, so I'm not going to spend too much time there. A couple things not to do. One is don't keep doing the old, right? Find out like what new messaging, what new marketing channels, what new sales techniques, what new delivery, right? And distribution. Like, don't keep doing the old because you're missing out on an opportunity. Don't rush the sale. Trust your process. Trust the solution sell. Follow the steps. Watch the data. And that is, it's an exercise in patience, but it is worth it. The return on investment comes at the end. And then, as we talked about earlier, don't lower the price. So maybe just as a wrap, and I'll pause, you guys will get a link. So I do want to highlight for everybody who's here, at the center of the page, I think there's a call to action. It says, click here with more resources and to connect with us.
Yeah,
and so that
in the chat.
Oh, it's in the chat as well. So thank you, Luann. So I think that is a real, it's a wealth of resources. It includes the upcoming webinar. So next week, we're going to help reboot the marketing plan. And then community plan, we're going to have a couple of guest speakers coming up, which is really a ton of fun. And then raising money in a recession. And then investing in uncertain times. So these are the next set of sessions that we're going to be coming into, and we're really excited to share those with you. Again, I just want to say thank you to EU for Innovation for helping to make this happen. Again, like the questions you guys have raised in the comments have been fantastic. Thank you so much for those. And then I just want to close with one comment. IB, you said, hey, one of our goals is to support micro businesses and increasing growth. Two things related to what IB just shared. One is that is exactly the right attitude. That's the right mindset, IB, is how can I help my customer? The result of that, IB, is in social and in your sales, you want to reflect that value, which is trying to help your micro businesses to increase growth. What content can you create that will help them do that in addition to your product? So tips and tricks, resources, how can you give them pragmatic, curated advice that will increase their trust in you and increase the value of your brand, so then it's easier for them to buy your product when the time comes. So that's my encouragement to you, IB. It's probably my final encouragement of this session. We've run a few minutes over. Any final questions before we break? And any final comments, Luann, from you as well?
No, I think it was a great session. I think I love the questions. I love the engagement, and I'm very much looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone. So thank you, everyone. Great session again. Don't hesitate to reach out to Luann and I at any point in time in LinkedIn. If you have questions, if there's ways for us to help, we'd love to do that. Look forward to seeing you next week. As we talk about marketing, we'll have a guest speaker who will join us as well. So there'll actually be 3 of us on next week, as well as the week following when we talk about community. So really excited for that. And we'll see you guys all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.